Imagine waking up one morning to find two strange men standing in your room. They tell you that you are under arrest, but no one tells you why. You are still allowed to move around freely. You can go to work, you can leave your apartment, and yet somewhere, proceedings against you have already begun. That is exactly how Franz Kafka's novel, The Trial, begins. The bank clerk, Josef K, leads an orderly life. He is conscientious, self-confident, and convinced that he is in control of his world. On his 30th birthday, that order is suddenly destroyed. Two warders appear in his room and inform him that he is under arrest. Josef K demands an explanation. He wants to know which law he has broken and who has brought the charges against him. But the men supposedly do not know themselves. They are merely following instructions. At first, Josef K believes it is a bad joke. Perhaps it is a misunderstanding. Perhaps his colleagues are trying to humiliate him. But the arrest is real. It simply does not look the way one would expect. There is no prison cell, no handcuffs, no visible judge. Instead, Josef K begins to be drawn ever deeper into an invisible court system. His first hearing does not take place in a magnificent courthouse, but in a run-down apartment building. He climbs narrow staircases, walks through cramped corridors, and finally finds an overcrowded room where people are already waiting for him. Josef K delivers an angry speech. He declares the entire proceeding corrupt, ridiculous, and unjust. But the more he defends himself, the more deeply he seems to become part of the system. The court does not react like a normal opponent. It does not openly contradict him. It explains nothing. It remains vague, unclear, and everywhere at once. Before long, Josef K realizes that the court offices are hidden in attics, back rooms, and cramped residential buildings. The air is stuffy. The rooms are overcrowded. Officials sit among mountains of files. Defendants wait for years without knowing when or even whether their cases will ever be decided. The court seems to have no fixed address, and yet there is nowhere one can escape it. Josef K seeks help. He turns to a lawyer who is said to have great influence over the court. But the lawyer is ill, slow, and mysterious. He talks at length without giving concrete answers. Instead of helping Josef K, he makes him even more dependent. Then Josef K meets a court painter. The painter explains the options available to a defendant. A genuine acquittal would theoretically be possible, but the painter knows of no single case in which anyone has actually been fully acquitted. Only two other paths remain. A provisional acquittal in which the trial can begin again at any time, or indefinite postponement, in which the proceedings continue forever without ever being concluded. Josef K slowly realizes that there appears to be no way out. The court is not interested in examining his innocence. Instead, it expects him to submit to the proceedings. The longer the trial continues, the more Josef K changes. At first, he is arrogant and convinced that he can solve the problem through logic. Later, he becomes restless, exhausted, and obsessed. His work suffers. His relationships suffer. Suddenly, every person seems to be connected to the court. A neighbor, a lawyer, a painter, a priest. No one can tell him what he has done, but almost everyone behaves as though he must be guilty. Shortly before his 31st birthday, two men appear in his apartment. Josef K seems to have been expecting them. They lead him out of the city to an abandoned quarry. There, they place his head on a stone. One of the men draws a knife. Josef K offers almost no resistance. His final thoughts are no longer about his innocence. They are about his shame. Then he is killed. Like a dog, he thinks. And that is where the true cruelty of the novel lies. The court does not need to imprison Josef K. It does not even need to prove that he is guilty. It is enough that Josef K. begins to see himself as a defendant. That is why The Trial is more than a story about bureaucracy. It is a story about faceless power, about rules no one understands, about institutions that act everywhere but are accountable to no one, and about the fear of being guilty without knowing what for. Kafka shows a world in which people search for clarity but find only more doors. Behind every door lies another corridor. Behind every corridor, another staircase. And at the end, no answer is waiting. Perhaps that is why The Trial still feels so modern today. Almost everyone knows the feeling of being at the mercy of a system. Forms, authorities, algorithms, regulations or decisions that no one can explain. You are sent from one office to the next. Everyone is responsible. And at the same time, no one is accountable. Josef K. believes he only needs to understand how the system works. But perhaps that is precisely his mistake. Because this system was not created to be understood. It was created to keep running. And while Josef K. searches for a way out, the trial itself becomes his entire life.